Hello class. Today we're going to talk about repeating decimals to fractions, but this time only part of the decimal is going to repeat. Okay, so please make sure that you are continuing to study your fractions to decimals because we will be having a quiz over those in the not too distant future, kind of like next Tuesday. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. So please continue to study the fraction to decimal equivalents. So let's review our lesson from the other day. Okay, over the last two lessons that we've had, we talked about how to turn fractions to decimals, which we know to turn a fraction to a decimal, all you do is divide, top in, bottom out, okay? And when you do that, you get two types of decimals: terminating decimals, decimals that stop, and repeating decimals, decimals that either repeat a single digit or multiple digits, a series of digits. Well, today what we're going to look at is what if only part of the decimal repeats. So that's what we're going to try to learn by the end of this lesson. But let's review what we've talked about. So in our last couple of lessons here, we learned how to convert a terminating decimal. Let me change my ink color here real quick. A terminating decimal or a repeating decimal, if the whole decimal is repeating, back to a decimal equivalent. Okay, so that's what we've learned how to do. So here are some example problems. So terminating, 0.6. I want to change that into a fraction. Well, we learned that in order to do it, all you have to do is say it correctly using place value. So to say 0.6 correctly, you would say that is 6/10. So that's exactly how you'd write it, 6/10. And then, of course, you'd simplify it. Now, if you remember, what I taught you to do is just simplify on the calculator. So I've got my calculator pulled up, which is a similar calculator to the one that you're using in class right now, or that you're using on the computer. And all you have to do is type in the decimal, 0.6, and then do math, enter. And it gives you the simplified fraction. So in this case, 3/5. Now, in order to get credit on any of these problems, I need to see unsimplified and simplified. That's because you're getting to use a calculator to do the simplifying. Okay, so if I don't see the unsimplified version, then I will take off points off your assignment. Okay, so the next one, 0.54. So we say that correctly as 54 hundredths. So we write that as 54/100. Then we go to our calculator and we type in 0.54, math, enter, and you end up with 27/50 for your simplified fraction. Now, what about repeating decimals? Now, repeating decimals, if you remember correctly, we couldn't quite put a 10 on the bottom because 0.6 with the bar is actually a little bit bigger than 0.6. So the way we do that is we make our denominator just a little bit smaller. So if you remember, what we do is we take our decimal, whatever it happens to be, and put it as the numerator. And we put a 9 for each digit that repeats in the denominator. So this particular one would be 6/9. Now on the calculator, to simulate that, what you had to do is type in that 6 repeating a whole bunch of times before you did math, enter. And then that tells the calculator, hey, this is a repeating 6, so I need you to treat it as such. So we end up with 2/3 as our simplified fraction. So for 0.54 repeating, you would take the 54, put it on top, and since we have two digits that are repeating, we would put 2 9s on bottom. And then we do the same thing. We type in 0.545454545454545454, whole bunch of times, math, enter, and it shows you your simplified version is 6/11. So again, on the assignments, I must see unsimplified and simplified, unsimplified, simplified, unsimplified, simplified. Now, there are some that don't simplify. I know which ones they are. I know which ones to expect a single answer for. But all the others, I better see too. So, what I'd like for you to do, let's see if you can do just a few for review on your own. So pause the video and answer these 3 questions. Okay, so let's see how you did. Let me change my ink color because my background is now different. Okay, so we've got 0.45. Well, what kind of decimal is that? That's a terminating decimal. Okay, so terminating decimals, we just say them using place value. So 0.45, we would say that is 45 hundredths, and that's how you write it. So one decimal gets tenths, so he gets a 10. 2 decimals get 100, 3 decimals get 1,000, 4 decimals get 10,000, and so on. And then we have to simplify that. So we go to our calculator, 0.45, math, enter, enter, and we end up with 9/20 as our final answer. Well, 0.7 with a bar. So what kind of a decimal is that? That's repeating. So in order to do that, you take the decimal, put it on top, and you put a 9 for each digit that repeats. Okay, now this one, 0.7777777777777777, math, enter, enter. Well, look at there. You'll notice this is one of those that's already in simplest form. Okay, so what about 0.745 repeating? Well, again, you take the whole decimal, 745, put it on top, and you put a 9 for each repeating digit. And then you try to simplify. So this one, 0.745, 745, 745, 745, 745, 745, 745, whole bunch of times, math, enter, enter, and oops, didn't hit the enter right. And look at there, it's already in its simplest form. Okay, so sometimes you may end up with fractions that are just ugly, and that's okay. Okay, but you still have to try to simplify nonetheless. Okay, so that's what we do if you have a terminating decimal or if you have a repeating decimal where the whole decimal repeats. So what if only part of it repeats? Well, this one's kind of tricky. Now in class, we're going to do this one as a discovery method, but in this video, we're just going to talk about it. So here's what we do. Let me flip down to where we have that instruction. So for repeating decimals, this is what we do. There's two things. First thing is the numerator. Okay, what you have to do is it says to find the numerator, it is going to be the difference of the whole decimal and the number formed by the non-repeating digits of the decimal. So that's how you do the numerator. I'll explain that in a second. For the denominator, you're going to put a 9 for each number that's repeating, for each repeating digit, and a 0 for each non-repeating digit. And of course, you'd put the 9s first. And then last but not least, you'd simplify. So here's an example. You've got 0.342 with only the 42 repeating. So the numerator, it says we're going to find the difference of the whole decimal and the number formed by the non-repeating digits. Okay, so the whole decimal is 342. And we're going to subtract from that the non-repeating part, or the number formed by the non-repeating part. In this case, there's just one, so I subtract the 3. So 342 minus 3 gives us 339. And then you put that for the denominator. You're going to put a 9 for each repeating digit and a 0 for each non-repeating. So this one's got 2 repeating digits, so I put 2 9s. It's got 1 non-repeating, so you put a 0. So our denominator becomes 990. Now to check this, to simplify, what you're going to do is type in 0.3, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42. Okay, and then math, enter, enter, and you end up with 113/330. Okay, so let's go back to our examples. So here are a couple of examples that I want us to try to do. So I'm going to do the first one, and then you're going to do the second one. Okay, so here we go. We've got 0.16 with a bar on the 6. So for the numerator, what we're going to do is we're going to take the entire decimal, and we're going to subtract from that the number formed by the non-repeating parts, in this case 1. We're going to put that over, well, we've got one digit that's repeating, one digit that's not repeating, so over 90. So 16 minus 1 is 15 over 90. And now we simplify. So that's where we go to our calculator. 0.1666666666666. Math, enter, enter, and you end up with 1/6 as your final answer. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do is do this second one by yourself. So pause the video and find for me the simplified, or the unsimplified, and the simplified decimal, or fraction, sorry. Okay, let's see how you did. So for the numerator, we're going to take 45, and we're going to subtract from that 4. We're going to put that over. One digit repeats. One digit doesn't repeat. So it's 45 minus 4, which is 41, over 90. So then we come over to the calculator, 0.455555555555555. Math, enter, enter. And you find out that that one is already in simplest form. Excellent. Well, let's talk about this next one. This next one is a little bit different. So for the numerator, you're going to take the entire decimal, 345, and we're going to subtract from that the number formed by the non-repeating portion. So this is 34. So we're going to subtract 34 from that. For the denominator, we have one number that repeats. We have two numbers that don't repeat. So that's 900. So we come to our calculator, do 345 minus 34. You find out that your top number is going to be 311, and your bottom number is 900. So now we see if it can simplify. So point 3, 4, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Math, enter, enter. And you find out that that one is also already in simplest form. Okay, so that's what I'm going to expect to see on this assignment. Unsimplified, simplified. If it doesn't simplify, then you would just have that as a single answer. Okay, so what about this one? Oh, this one looks a little bit tougher. So let's see if we can figure out the fraction. Okay, so this one right here. So our top number, we're going to take the whole decimal, 1, 2, 3, 4, and subtract from that the number formed by the non-repeating portion, which in this case is 12. So we would go over 1, 2, 3, 4, minus 12, enter. You end up with 1,222. Now for the denominator. Well, we've got two numbers that repeat. That's 2 9s. And two numbers that don't repeat. So that's 2 zeros. So my denominator is going to be 9,900. So we go to our calculator. Point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. One more for good measure. And then math. Enter, enter. Oh no. What did it do? Well, maybe I just didn't type in enough 3 4. So let's try. Point 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4. Oh, I did all the way across the screen there. So math, enter, enter. Oh no, it didn't do anything. It didn't change it. Well, in this instance, guess what? You have to do it by hand. Now, you know this one will simplify because it ends with a 2 and it ends with a 0. They're even numbers. So you know you can simplify. So I know good and well that's not in its simplest form. So if that's what you gave me as your final answer because the calculator wouldn't do it, well, I count it wrong. Okay? Or I take off lots of points. Does that make sense? So we got to do it by hand. So what do we have to do to simplify by hand? You take your numerator and your denominator and you divide it by a single number. In this case, I know that it ends with a 2 and a 0, so they're even, so I can divide them by 2. So that's what I do. 1, 2, 2, 2, divided by 2, you end up with 611. Okay, and then I do 9900 divided by 2, and you end up with 4,950. And we find out that those two numbers, they no longer have anything in common, and that becomes my final answer. But I still need to see simplified or unsimplified and simplified. Okay? But sometimes what you got to understand is the calculator may not give it to you. Okay, so you still have to simplify it. You just have to do it by hand. And the way you do that is you divide each number by a single factor, a single number. Okay? So, again, let's kind of review. For a repeating decimal to a fraction, where only part of it repeats, to find the numerator, you find the difference of the whole decimal and the number formed by the non-repeating digits of the decimal. That becomes your numerator. Your denominator, you'll put a 9 for each repeating digit of the decimal and a 0 for each non-repeating digit. And then, of course, you simplify. So what you're going to do today for your assignment is that very same thing. I'm going to give you a series of decimals. Some of them, the whole thing repeats. Some of it, only part of it repeats. So let's look at this first one together. This first one, the whole thing repeats. So if you were to go back to this right here, could you still use, for any repeating decimal, could you still use this process? Yes. So in this first one, you're going to take the entire decimal. In this case, it is 6, because 0.06, you don't need the 0. Okay. For each digit that repeats, you put a 9. So I've got 2 that repeat, so that's 2 9s. Okay, you put a 0 for each non-repeating. Do I have any non-repeating? No. For my numerator, do I have anything to subtract? No. So you end up with 6 over 99. Now, we got to simplify that. Now, I'll be real honest, sometimes it's easier just to simplify it by hand. I know the 6 and the 99, they have a 3 in common, so I could divide them both by 3 and get 2 over 33. Or you could take the lazy approach and use your calculator. 0.06060606060606, math, enter, and look at there, you get the same answer. Wow. Okay, now let's look at one that only part of it repeats. So let's come down here and look at question number 5. So in this one, you're going to take the whole decimal, 54, subtract the non-repeating part, 5, divided by, or over. You've got one digit that repeats, one digit that doesn't repeat. So our unsimplified is going to be 49 over 90. So then we go to our calculator, 0.5444444444444, math, enter, and you find out that that one's already in simplest form, so you're done. And that's all I want you to do on this assignment. Now, what if you have one like number 10 that has a whole number in front of it? What are you going to do with that? You'll just stick the 3 in front of the fraction. That's all you got to do. Simple as that. Okay, so that's what I want you to do for your assignment today. Ooh, look at question number 20. Ooh, that one looks fun. Good luck. Until next time, I'll see you later.